I am continuing to make my way through Cobra Kai, and I just got done with Cobra Kai season 3 yesterday. And I do have a pretty nuanced and mixed opinion, so make sure you check out the entire video here so you get a full grasp of what I'm trying to say. Because this season, season 3 of Cobra Kai, had so much greatness, and yet some parts of it were so goofy and over the top. A trend that sort of began with season 2, it continues into this show, season 3, to where there are parts of this show that I felt were going into territory where it actually felt like an anime. Like, this show gives me heavy anime vibes. Like, not just with the storytelling and sort of how things play out and the way the characters are kind of developing and then sort of enveloping each other, and the twists and the turns. That stuff was all great. I think the storytelling of the show and what happens to the characters, it's what's keeping me invested. That's really it. The characters are all very interesting. They're all very likable, except for the villains. A couple of them anyways. And they're all characters that even when they do bad things, you still sort of feel for them. You still sort of relate to them, even if it's a decision that's made that is objectively a bad thing to do. Now, the premise of season 3 is that it's sort of the aftermath of what happened at the end of season 2. At the end of season 2, there was that ridiculously over the top and very unrealistic high school rumble where everybody was like fighting with each other in the school, and then Miguel was injured because he was kicked off like a stairwell, and his back hit this like this sort of a railing. And in this season, it sort of picks up from there with not only how Johnny and Daniel are kind of trying to cope with what happened, and everybody else around them as well, you know, because even like Samantha and those characters are trying to figure everything out. But in addition to that, it shows us what actually happened to Miguel and what happens to Bobby. Because basically the first half of season 3 is dealing with this. Miguel's in the hospital and Bobby's in jail. And that's kind of where we pick up the story. Now, this is the first season of Cobra Kai that was on Netflix. Originally, this was a YouTube series for premium YouTube. And what wound up happening was eventually Netflix got the rights to it. Now, when Netflix got the rights to it, it felt like a lot of the, I guess you can call it, a lot of the limitations that were put on the show were kind of broken, meaning as far as time goes. Most of the episodes from the first 2 seasons were about 30 minutes, maybe a bit less, a bit more than that. Here, most of the episodes are over 30 minutes, with the finale being, I think, 41-ish minutes. So at least they're able to really flesh out stories if necessary. So Miguel is injured and Bobby's in jail, and Bobby has to deal with this jail bully, this dude with his 2 friends, who instantly was the most hateable character in this whole show. I wound up hating this man with a passion, how he would not leave Bobby alone for no reason other than to be a bully. I was bullied like this in 10th grade by a kid, and it really brought back memories because I can't stand bullies. I can't stand people that attack and pick on other people for literally no reason. For no reason. And then while that's going on, Miguel is just trying to recover. And then the story of Johnny takes a turn because he tries to go back and he tries to reunite with some people in the past, because what ends up happening is Krese takes over Cobra Kai. And all of that is sort of happening at once, and the series is kind of cutting through all these storylines. Now, about, I would say, maybe halfway through the season, the story sort of shifts to where we have a fallout, a major fallout. I mean, it already sort of happened in season 2, but Johnny and Krese have their falling out, and what ends up happening, the way it's sort of being built up, is at like near the end, as we approach the season finale, there's 3 different martial arts academies. There's 3 different karate dojos. And these 3 dojos, one run by Daniel, one by Johnny, one by Krese. But eventually what ends up happening is the season finale has a wonderful moment that people have been waiting for years. But my God, is it over the top and just it was very difficult for me to watch this. I had to sort of do what I do with pro wrestling and a lot of movies is I had to sort of suspend my disbelief. When you watch a pro wrestling match, you know that it's all predetermined and you know it's a show, it's entertainment. And if you ever seen a real fight, you know real fights aren't like this. Well, with Cobra Kai season 1, it was very grounded. Season 2 and even more so season 3, it really is like an anime now. It feels like, one of those anime with these high school rivals because there are fights all over this show where people get hit in the mouth and kicked and there's no blood. I mean, there's blood in the show, but when you hit somebody, there's a part near the end, like in the last episode, there's this ridiculous fight at like this house. It's like another Rumble, like what happened in season 2. There's kids that are getting smashed into walls and through lamps where in real life, if this happened, you'd be out. And there's barely any injuries here. Like things like that can take somebody out of the show. And to me, the thing about the show is it's sort of in a way leaning more into not only 80s schlock, but also leaning into really comedy. I mean, the thing I think people forget about Cobra Kai, and I didn't know this till I looked into it when I was going into season 1, is that season 1, again, very grounded, but the show was made by comedians. This show is meant to be a comedy. You understand what I'm saying? And yeah, there's obviously your emotional moments, and there's romantic stuff in this season. We saw the return of Elizabeth Shue as Allie, which I was not expecting. That is one I did not think. I knew everybody came back, but I did not think we were actually going to see her in this show. Nobody had spoiled it for me. At least I don't think they did. I don't remember. And so when season 2's cliffhanger happened with the phone, I was like, wait, is she actually going to show up? Well, they don't give you that payoff right away. You got to wait till the second half of the season. The first half is still sort of reeling from what happened at the end of season 2. And while that was going on, they did a pretty good job of kind of subtly building up Kreese's Cobra Kai and how they basically just became bullies, and sort of Johnny's realization that the way that he was taught was wrong, which sort of began in season 1, but really, really climaxed in this season. And we started seeing Johnny and Daniel's sort of, I guess you want to call it, their friendship being born. And there's even a line said from Kreese, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." And of course that was foreshadowing because that is what ends up happening with Daniel and Johnny. And you have to understand what made this so emotionally satisfying, because the thing about this show is, as ridiculous and as over the top as it can be, it writes its characters very well, and it gives you satisfying payoffs. And really that's what melodrama is supposed to do. And this is a comedy, but it didn't just go down just goofball comedy where everyone's a slapstick idiot. Like, you've got character arcs, you've got multiple love triangles involving the high schoolers and the adults, because when Allie comes back, even though it doesn't become a love triangle like how it was in the first Karate Kid movie, they definitely, absolutely have multiple sequences with Allie, Daniel, and Johnny, and it's sort of meant to remind you of, Karate Kid 1. But Karate Kid 1 is not the only movie that got referenced here. What surprised me so much is in the first half of the season, it's almost like a tribute, not just to Miyagi, not just to Pat Morita. I always find when Daniel thinks about thinks about, Mr. Miyagi, and thinks about the past, it's always very heartwarming because it's done with so much respect and so much regard. You can tell the makers of this show really respect that man, and they should, because he was the linchpin of the series. He might not have been the main character of Karate Kid, but he was the second main character, the mentor figure. There's a lot of love there, but the Karate Kid Part 2 really, really had a factor here. And when you see Daniel reuniting with characters from the Karate Kid Part 2. I mean, I obviously, again, I knew that they could have gone in that direction when they started making this show. And I was wondering if they would, because I did try to avoid spoilers, and they absolutely did. And it reminded me, because I was thinking about it, Karate Kid Part 2 is not even that bad of a movie. Like, I think a lot of folks, Part 1, without question, Karate Kid 1 is like levels above anything else in that franchise. Like, it blows away all the other movies easily, and it's the most iconic. Karate Kid Part 2 did have some pretty interesting ideas. 3 is the one, I mean, 3 had a good idea, just it was executed kind of poorly, but I also haven't seen that movie in decades, so maybe I'll feel different about it now watching it as an adult. And the other thing that I will say about this show, which does make it a huge success, is that Cobra Kai has made the OG Karate Kid movies better. Like, what happens to the characters, not so much the goofiness and the over-the-top, unrealistic fights, but the characters and the way that they're written genuinely makes the Karate Kid movie better. And it makes what happened in that movie mean more. But I did not ever think that I was going to see characters from Karate Kid 2 come back. It was really, really interesting. Daniel's entire situation in this season, dealing with women of his past, was a very interesting choice they made. And the other thing involving the past that I was not expecting to see either, that was actually pleasant, was the backstory of Krese going to Vietnam and dealing with what he dealt with, and introducing, well, not so much introducing, but showing us, young Terry Silver. And of course, that's the big cliffhanger for season 3. It really just, they did a lot of surprises. There were a lot of surprises in this season that were pleasant. And the story, I genuinely enjoyed it. They still have the fish out of water thing where Johnny doesn't really understand modern tech, hashtags or hash browns, and funny stuff like that. It's funny because if this wasn't a comedy, it wouldn't work, because I know there's people that are stuck in the past, but nobody can be so stuck in the past and not know what Facebook is, or not. Like, he acts like he doesn't even know what a computer is, and it's very hard to have lived in the world, even if you're not, if you don't work on a computer, if you're not somebody who uses a computer daily, even if you're not one of those people, it's very difficult to live in this world now without at least having a smartphone. It's very difficult. There are too many reasons people have smartphones: GPS, information, helping you find jobs, communication, ordering food. There's just too many things you can do on a smartphone. And for Johnny to have no experience with tech, it's a little goofy, right? But it's also the charming part of the character. If you disconnect your logical side of your brain, not entirely, I'm not saying you have to shut your brain off like with the Acolyte, but if you disconnect at least some logical points, the show, and you really focus on the characters and story, the show is a lot of fun. Other than that, it can be difficult for some, and I can understand people that said that season 1's their favorite, because it does feel like a different show at this point. It really does. Also, they did a tribute to Rob Garrison, who passed away, after the second season of Cobra Kai. He was in the character, right? The character of Tommy in the Karate Kid, he's the guy who said put him in a body bag. He wound up passing away after season 2. I don't remember if I mentioned it in my season 2 review, but that was a shocker, because I didn't know that he actually did pass away, but he did pass away. And it was, it's weird. It's always weird when a celebrity, his character dies, and we actually see him get put in a literal body bag. And so his character passes away, and then the actor passes away, like, as before the show even airs, and that was a bummer. That was a big bummer, because it just, I can only imagine how it felt for those actors. I can only imagine. But that they dedicated the first episode of season 3 to him, and that was nice. So, season 3 ends pretty much with the teaser for the upcoming tournament, and that's going to be season 4. So, I look forward to starting that very, very soon. I'm trying to catch up before Cobra Kai season 6 starts. I don't know if I'm going to get to catch up by then. I'm not sure if I can make it. So, I may miss the first few episodes, but I want to review them here as they come out. So, hopefully, I'll be able to do it. Anyways, man, those are my thoughts. Cobra Kai season 3, enjoyable, wacky, goofy, but remember, it's a comedy at this point. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below.